harm to people's chemistry methods. I think they are both sentences. Of course. Yeah, just flip them up.
All right. Hi, guys. So, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dear God, we thank you for the opportunity to serve Our Lady's entrusted community. May we, members of the Student Senate, be servants of hope and instruments of great change. May we listen and lead with humility, kindness, courage, and love. May we work consciously, diligently, and thoughtfully to make this great institution the best it can be. May we be inspired to create positive change in this chamber as members of the groups we represent and in our larger student union and student body. May we develop a community that inspires all to engage in our daily vocation to be the truest brothers and sisters we can be. Through our dedication, may we call this community our family and this university our home. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Father.
Thank you so much, Isabella. I also like your Carhartt shirt. That is from Detroit. All right, we can proceed to roll call now. Catherine, I'll invite you to take it away.
Okay. Dan Bowden-Diestel. Isabella Garcia is here. Daniel Schermerhorn. Sarah Kirsch. John Mansfield. Christina Escajadillo. Anoop Sunkara. Michael Murakami. Jordan Leiden. Niels Casperson. Maggie Allen. Albertina Estrada Martinez.
Here.
Madison Nemeth. Henry Jackson. Benjamin Earhart. Jason Thomas. Natalie Ortega. Molly Schrock.
Here.
Lainey Teeters. Ahmed Al-Hassani. Alec Brayler. Bianca Burnett. Carson Thompson. Libby Messman. Michael Lynch. Miles Kelly. Alex Kobolowski. Patrick Lee. Grace Franco. Teresa Salazar. Henry Bates. Blake Johnson. Johnny O'Meara. Renee Pearson. Jordan Thuralt. Sam Canova. Ricardo Pozos Garza. Connor Delaney. Rachel Ingle is here. Aaron, Grace Stevenson. Mairead Pfaff. Julia Orkurt. Matthew Bisner. Estefan Linares. And Karen Kennedy. Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Catherine. You can keep the show rolling with approval of minutes. Did everyone get a chance to look at the minutes that Catherine sent out from last week?
So last week we talked about, or we had a presentation from Campus Dining and the Director of Sourcing and Sustainability about improvements being made in the dining hall and transitions that we are going through. And we were given an update on the Student Advisory Group for Campus Reopening and the University Committee on Women Faculty and Senate Students. Executive statements by Rachel and Aaron were delivered. Order 2021-07 to make $10,000 available from the Student Union COVID-19 response financial account was approved. Order 2021-08 in order to suspend latecomer elections was approved. And Order 2021-09 in order proposing an amendment to the Constitution of the Executive Programming Board with the Executive Committee after debate was tabled to the Committee on the Constitution to be reformatted and brought back in a future meeting.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Catherine. Any questions, comments, concerns on any of that? All right, seeing none, we can move on to executive announcements, and I'd like to invite Rachel to tell us a little bit more about Rock the Vote coming up tomorrow.
Hello. So as you may have noticed, this week is Civic Engagement Week. Been really exciting. Our Director of National Engagement has been working really closely with a lot of the political clubs on campus, as well as with ND Votes, to be putting on a lot of different events. So hopefully you're able to see some of them earlier in the week. There's a great documentary that happened on Tuesday and the mock debate that happened on Monday as well. But we're really excited for the event that's sort of the culmination of the week. Rock the Vote is happening on Friday. So we will have different live performances. There will be food, different speakers from student clubs. So we'd love to see you there.
No, I think you're still rolling with our Women's Leadership Forum on Sunday.
Okay, thank you. And this Sunday, we have the Women's Leadership Forum going on again as well. Really excited for the second version of that. So that we will have Jen McAward, who's the director of the Clow Center. So very excited to hear what she has to say. And once again, we will also be streaming that for the larger student body. So feel free to tune in and make sure that your dorms know about that event as well. Okay, Oh, yes, thank you, sorry. As you know, we serve on the student advisory group for campus reopening with Erin Hoffman-Harding. So like usual, feel free to send us your questions and we'd be happy to get those addressed as well. Really, we cover a very broad base of things. So anything that you have questions on, we should hopefully be able to address.
Awesome. Thanks for handling those trifecta of announcements, Rachel. And I can now hand it over to Grace Dean, our Director of Health and Wellbeing, who I believe is joining us over Zoom today.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
She is. Yes, we can, loud and clear.
Beautiful. All right, hi guys, sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I just wanted to pop in and say that we are meeting with UHS tomorrow morning to talk about some ways in which we can improve education policies surrounding the continued risks of COVID once students leave isolation, and just to build some more transparency and make sure that we're still following guidelines and that students still know what to expect for themselves and for one another once they leave isolation to keep our campus community safe. So if you have any specific concerns about education when we're integrating students back into the campus community, please reach out to me. Or if you have any questions or any specific items you'd like me to bring up, I'm an open book, and so please feel free to get in touch.
Thank you so much for joining us, Grace. Really appreciate that.
Of course.
I'd now like to welcome our Director of Diversity and Inclusion, Kaya Lawrence, to introduce Paige Jackson, who will be leading us in a mindful training today.
Hi everyone, my name is Kaya, and as Sarah just said, I'm Director of Diversity and Inclusion, and I'm here to introduce Paige. I know that any introduction I give her will not do her justice. Paige Jackson is the Assistant Director of Diversity Education, Outreach and Assessment in MSPS. She's also a doctoral candidate, and I know her research explores the important issue of racial battle fatigue. Paige began her journey here at Notre Dame the same time I did when I was a freshman, so I've developed a special connection with her over the years. Paige is bold and courageous in how she fights for racial justice and student well-being at this university, and she's a wonderful advocate, ally, and mentor, and I know she can be a great resource for all of y'all. She actually developed a mindful training on microaggression intervention that you all will be undertaking today as part of the Celebrating Diversity workshop, and I've taken it a few times, and I just know that I couldn't think of a better person to share this information with y'all. So with that, I'll turn it over to Paige.
Thank you, Kaya. I appreciate that introduction. And I also just want to give a shout out to Sarah and Aaron for helping to put this together. I know it was a really quick turnaround. And so I'm just so happy to have another year here in front of the Senate with you all and celebrate the great work that you all are doing. And so with the interest of time, I'll go ahead and get started. This is a little bit different for me because I've gotten so used to seeing all of the faces on Zoom. And this time around, I only get to see a few faces. So if you have any questions, please, I can't see that far who's at the computer, but who is it? Sarah, are you at the computer? Is that you can wait?
It's Rachel.
Rachel, okay, if you have a question, just let Rachel know to type it in the chat and we'll go from there. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So just a little bit about Mindful. Myself, along with some other campus partners from the Healthy Campus Coalition Committee that we have here on campus, which is a committee that is dedicated to improving the well-being of our students. We wanted to figure out a way, those individuals, those students who are dealing with racial microaggressions here on campus, an effective way for them to cope. And so we wanted to find a way in the same way comparable to Green Dot and for students to be able to know what to do when racial microaggressions are happening to them in the moment and how they could respond to them. Just to give a little bit of background, this here is our MSPS mission statement, and we try to create a welcoming environment for all students. And so I make sure I just put the emphasis on all students because sometimes students may believe, oh, well, that's not for me because I may identify as white, or that's only for people of color. And that's just not the case. We try to support holistic development through educational programming and cross-cultural exploration. And so we just really want to encourage our students to become change agents for social justice and ensure access to opportunities and resources for historically underrepresented students to thrive here at the university and beyond. So one of the things I want to do here today is to help increase self-awareness and also to help us understand racial microaggression and its impact. And here I also just want to share a little bit about myself as well, just to introduce to share more information. I know that Kaya shared that this is, I'm going into my 4th year here now at the institution, and I'm just really excited to be here and continue to do this work of diversity education. To give some background on Mindful, we piloted this program last year, and I just simply called it diversity education. Super original, I know. And one of the goals was to get into the dorm rooms. And one of the reasons why this has come up, and you'll see a little bit more in my presentation, actually, one of the reasons why we wanted to do this it's because of all of the complaints and also the numbers that came from the Inclusive Campus Survey. So for our outline today, we'll talk about some key terms and definitions. We'll talk about Notre Dame's mission against discrimination, how microaggressions live at our university, 4 different types of microaggressions, examples of microaggressions, and how we can, and what does encountering them look like? Did this really occur? People have various experiences when they're encountering them. And then I'll introduce our R.A.V.E.N Framework and love and kindness meditation that will help us take inventory of our own biases and prejudices. One of the things that when someone always asks me, what it is that can I do? How can I become a better ally? How can I support the community? How can I help continue to move the needle in the right direction? And one of the things at this point, I am returning people to themselves and helping them understand that it's you who shows up in the room, and we have to be a lot more aware and cognizant of the things and the biases and prejudices that we carry, because that is how we, that's how harm is caused sometimes, specifically with racial microaggressions, those that are not overt intentional and meaning to be malice. It's usually when people are well-intended. So I just want to share just a couple of, I'm not going to play these videos, but I just wanted to show a couple of lead researchers who are in the field of racial microaggressions, Dr. Sue and Dr. Lehman. One of my goals for you all too is I hope that you all can continue the conversation outside of today. And that is the reason why you all have participant guides. And I hope you all got your MSPS swag that I have given out to you all, but that's one of the reasons why you all have a participant guide, so that when you're having meetings, or when you're having committee meetings, or if you want to do the work with yourself to figure out how you can increase your knowledge base, you have that resource there for you at that particular time. So let's talk about the definition of racial microaggressions. So the term racial microaggressions indicates the small, understated, obscure nature of the occurrences of people of color. I can't speak this afternoon. The environmental microaggressions are visible or invisible, conscious or unconscious words and behaviors that convey racially derogatory messages or specifically insult or invalidate people of color. And so, and I think that is super important that I'm clear that individuals, the people who I am talking about in this particular presentation, are those individuals who are doing things that are unconscious. Because when you have somebody who is overt in calling people out of their name, or they're just being overtly prejudiced, they're saying derogatory terms, the course of action is just a little bit easier. You can speak to your rector, you can talk to campus security, or you can speak to NDPD. You have an idea, because it's clear visually the harm that has been caused to the community or that particular person who was targeted in that particular moment. I wanted to make sure that we talked about the Universities of Notre Dame's spirit of inclusion. And one of the reasons why is because when we get down to the R.A.V.E.N Framework later on in the presentation, one of the things that we must have an understanding is what our values are as an institution as it relates to discrimination in the spirit of inclusion. And so I wanted to pull a part of the spirit of inclusion statement here to make sure that people know that it does exist, and for you all to become somewhat familiar with it. And this also helps when you are having a conversation or you're confronting someone who is an aggressor and or they are targeting someone out in public. This is one of those things that you can help have a springboard for conversation and helping students understand that this is not how our institution gets down. And so we need to be mindful of what we're saying and what we're doing and how we're showing up. And so it says that, we welcome all people regardless of color, gender, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, social or economic class, nationality, precisely because Christ calling to treat others as we are desired to be treated. We value gay and lesbian members of this community as we value all members of this community. We condemn harassment of any kind, and the university policies prescribe it. And so I think that it's making it's making it clear where the institution stands, and it can be used as an accountability tool when we are trying to address people in the moment when racial microaggressions are occurring. So I felt like it was just really important to talk about just the makeup also of the institution, and um, and also how realizing that the University of Notre Dame, during its inception, when it was founded, it was created for white men. And so space had to be carved out intentionally to be able to admit Fraser Thompson in 1944, which is realistically not even that long ago. And women were admitted to ND in 1972. So really there are individuals. I just met an ND alum actually in a Zoom meeting, Black male who was class of like 83. And so it's really amazing to think that if he had would attended, the university 10 years prior to that, it still would have been an all-male institution. When we think about the numerical representation of people of color, the faculty and staff, are those things reflective at the moment? And it's no. I believe there are under 100 faculty members, people who teach or in the classroom, under 100 faculty who identify as people of color, and even smaller for staff. So it's really important, and then also to consider some of the racial behaviors inside and outside of the classroom. One of the things to consider is we are upon an election year, and some of you may be familiar, but during the last election, certain behaviors arise that were not aligned with the institution. And this is why this is so important, that if you see something like this, if you are witnessing individuals being targeted, or you can see that there could be potential harm in the community, that we say something. These numbers here have been extracted from the Inclusive Campus Survey, Climate Survey, and which is one of the reasons why Mindful was created. I feel like it's so important right now, because when the housing policy was changed to living on campus from 4 semesters to 6 semesters, individuals who had already been previously marginalized, whether it was due to race or their ethnicity, or it had to deal with how they identified on the love spectrum, they were not happy about this policy change. And as much as I empathize with them, one of the things that I came to learn, or where I stood on that position, was that, even if you decide to move off campus, it does not change the culture, the problematic culture that exists within the dorms. And so while moving may temporarily do something, what about future students? And so right now, if you have the opportunity to go to diversity, if you just type in diversity and inclusion at ND, the diversity inclusion website will pop up, and you can just click on the initiatives tab and look at the 2018 results. This campus climate survey is done every 2 years, but because of everything that's happened with COVID, we have yet to see the 2020 results. So that's why I'm going from the 2018. But what it demonstrated, one, is that students are not reporting when these incidents are happening and when they observe them. Secondly, microaggressions are happening at a higher level between student to student versus student to faculty versus student to staff member. And while we have certain resources in place for our faculty, Pamela Nolan Young, and our staff members, in our staff training, Eric Love, I'm responsible for you all's diversity education. And so more than ever, especially right now during a time of COVID, when who knows if there's a possibility that the institution goes completely online again and you will have to be in the dorm rooms. We have to be able to have this conversation, because when it comes to the location in which microaggressions are taking place, they're happening at a higher level within a dorm room. So during these times, during this particular time, this situation is primed for microaggressions to take place, especially with student to student and within the dorms. And so I just wanted to share a couple of numbers with you all to help demonstrate, or illustrate, I should say, some of, to illustrate how these microaggressions are living at the university and why it's important that we address these things and move forward. A little bit more definition. So we have the microaggressions. Micro assaults, we talked about microaggressions. Micro assaults, those are the conscious and intentional actions or slurs, displaying swastikas or deliberately serving a white person before a person of color. The micro assaults, though, that is what I was seeing, that when responding to those, it's a little bit more obvious the course of action that you can take, because you see there's this deliberate thing that's happening, and there is no concealing it. It's intentional, it's overt, and at that time you would need to go to Speak Up ND, you would need to go to your rector, your AR, your RA, faculty, staff, someone who you feel comfortable with reporting this information to. The micro invalidations, those are the things that subtly exclude or negate or nullify thoughts, feelings of people of color. And so those are not as obvious, but at the end of the day, those micro invalidations, those are they're slights at people of color, and are meant, I don't want to say what a person's intention is, but this particular situation with micro invalidations can be something as simple, and you can find this in your participant guide, like, oh, you're so articulate, suggesting that, oh, you are speaking better than I anticipated you to do, and I'm thoroughly impressed, and I'm surprised that you are able to do this. The micro insults are the verbal and nonverbal communications that subtly convey rudeness and insensitivity and demeans a person's racial heritage and or identity. One of my favorites, not like because it's my jam, but one of my favorite ones, because I sometimes challenge this ideology of colorblind racism, is the notion that racism doesn't operate with the assumption that the society is post-racial and that people do not see race. And if you have just been keeping up, there is a lot of hashtags that are, a lot of people who are calling for justice for Breonna Taylor. And it's still, it's a little sore for me right now, if I'm just being completely honest and transparent. But to say, when one says that they did not see color or we're past these things, it would be to completely dismiss all of the racial injustice, all of the things, and the protests that have been happening this summer, and also dismissing the lived experiences of those individuals who we know who do identify as a person of color or a part of a marginalized population. I just want to stop there for a second to see if there were any questions. Okay, all right, I'll continue forward. So there are several types of microaggressions. The assumptions of criminality. So this is when a person of color is assumed to be dangerous or deviant. An example of this was a young lady who attended Yale. She was in her common area, just minding her business, studying like students do when they're in their common area, wanting to either maybe take a break from the room or get away from your roommate for a little bit. Maybe you just need some time to reflect or call people, text, catch up on your social media, things that normal college students do. And a neighbor of hers questioned if she had any business being where she was. And she called the police, the university police. And now it has become this whole thing that this student has to prove that she lives there, that she deserves to be there just like everybody else who paid their tuition. Or another story that I come across was a group of, I don't know if they were students. They looked like college age to me, college age Black students, and they rented an Airbnb. And so they are going to the door and they are opening up the key lockbox so that they can go into the Airbnb that they paid for. And then the neighbor across the street calls the police on them for breaking into this house without getting clarity as to what was actually happening. When a person is exoticized, this is when a person of color is objectified or is treated as tokens. One of my favorite stories, because it's just, you can't make this stuff up. There was an institution who will remain nameless. They wanted to, demonstrate that their institution was diverse, more diverse than what it actually was. And so they are getting some admissions material together. And a student, there's a picture on the front page of this admissions magazine of all the students at the football game, and it's great. And one of the students, he was like, "Oh, look, there's my face." And then he realized he actually never went to a football game. So somebody decided to find a person of color, crop it, and then stick him in the stands with other students who were at the game, all in an effort to make it look like they were more diversified than they were. Not only is this objectifying and tokenizing this person, but it's very much misleading. It's very much misleading at the expense of a student, no less. Assumptions of intellectual inferiority. This happens commonly at our institution, unfortunately. I can't count how many times students have come to me suggesting that their professors either change a class, question if they have the competency, or question if they have the capacity to take the class. And it becomes this whole conversation about letting the student know why they deserve to be in the room, just along with everyone else. And that, or if a person is being assumed to be an affirmative action admit. And I try to debunk that by letting them know that white women are the true beneficiaries of affirmative action. But no one questions white women if they're in, or suggests that they have only been admitted to the University of Notre Dame because of an affirmative action admit. And the last one, this is when people of color are criticized for their communication styles, behaviors, and style of dress. So pathologizing these cultural values and You can find this. You can find this on campus because our campus has a very heavy Catholic presence. You can walk on Notre Dame's campus, and without a shadow of a doubt, in less than 10 minutes, you can see, based off the signs and the symbols and the imagery, where our institution stands. Anything that may be contradictory to that, those are the things where, those things may be criticized. So for example, our floor, multicultural student programs, our office, multicultural student programs and services, we are on the second floor, and it's always mind-boggling to me that it's so quiet, because if any of you have gone to the student activities, I'm missing student activities night, I think it is, where everyone, can somebody just say yes or no? Like, it says student activities night where every student group has their table in the beginning of the semester. Like, we didn't do it this year because COVID. But when you go to the student activities night and you check out all these clubs and organizations, you'll come across the part of the fair where there's the cultural clubs. And they have their music going, they have their cultural dresses going, they have all of the things. It's amazing. But it's a different part. It's that a part of the fair is different from any other part of the fair because of all of the different cultural representations and music, and people are dancing, they're laughing, and they're, they may be a little loud, and that's okay. But that is not reflected. That is a one moment in time type of situations where students are feeling like they have the freedom to be themselves without being quieted down or hushed, and having to be silent. So consequences of these racial microaggressions, I wanted to talk to you guys about it because we may know what they are and we may know that they're not cool, but what happens when a person is consistently experiencing racial microaggressions? Racial battle fatigue is the result, and it actually addresses the physiological, the psychological strain exacted on racially marginalized groups. And it's the amount of energy lost dedicated to coping with racial microaggressions in race. So for people of color, specifically African Americans, R.A.V.E.F. Racial battle fatigue is the result of the constant physiological, psychological, cultural, and emotional coping with racial microaggressions. And this is why it's so important to be able to recognize these things, because it may manifest itself in frustration, anger, exhaustion, physical avoidance, escapism, acceptance of racist attribution, resistance. But more importantly, it impacts student connectedness and academic achievement. So, for example, earlier this year, when people were still trying to understand the Breonna Taylor's case, at one point in time, Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend was offered a deal that if he said that Breonna Taylor was amongst this drug ring that they were trying to bring down, they would give him a deal less years or something. And he wouldn't do it because he was like, you guys messed up. You guys, like, you made a mistake, and she had nothing to do with it, so I'm not going to say that. Well, this news is coming down the pipeline. It's on the news outlets. But one of the students who I was in conversation with became really distraught from this idea of them questioning Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend. And she shared with me that at that particular time that she didn't want to go to class. She didn't go to class that day because it had just become too much. She just needed to protect her peace. And as much as I, knew the academic implications, 100% understood where she was coming from in that moment. But I shared that story to say, just hypothetically, what if every time something happened like this, students didn't have the mental capacity to go to class? That is one way how it impacts academic achievement. Or you find yourself in your student organization, and you have found that during this time frame, the students of color who are part of this organization are starting to withdraw, or you can see that they're very verbal or social outside of the organization, but every time a meeting happens, they have nothing to say, because they may feel like they may not be heard, or they get to a place of what's the point. And so all of these things can manifest itself as racial battle fatigue. And this is why it's so important that we have conversations about this, that today is not the only day that you all are wanting to have this conversation, and that you find someone to process and talk to. At the end of my presentation, I have a list of resources from our office to the GRC, to Speak Up Indeed, to the Counseling Center, and some other offices that students can utilize as resources to deal with the coping and knowing how to work through those difficult moments that we need to be able to let out and not hold on to. So I just wanted to give somewhat of a conceptual framework or a model so that you guys can see how racial battle fatigue comes as a result of experiencing these racial microaggressions, and how racial microaggressions is race-related stress, and how, if not checked, can result in RBF. So sometimes there's a few dilemmas in understanding why it's so difficult, because sometimes you just don't even know if it's if what just happened actually happened. The dilemma one is the invisibility of intentional expressions of bias. And so this tends to be subtle, indirect, or unintentional. This is why I think that it's so important that you all are introduced to the fact that loving kindness meditations actually the research has shown to help reduce implicit bias. And this is what I mean by it starts with the work in ourselves, because it's implicit biases and prejudices, they're just not there hanging in the air waiting for us. It's us who brings those into the room. Dilemma two is that there's this perceived minimum harm of microaggression. So, people will just say, just let it go. You're overreacting. It's not a big deal. And the cumulative effect of these microaggressions can be more than problematic and detrimental than over acts of prejudice, because, as I said before, it's the continuously building up. It's the constant energy that is lost and happening over a long time. Dilemma three is a catch-22 of responding to microaggressions. This is damned if you do, damned if you don't. I'll give you an example of this. Just want to check the time. I'll give you an example of this. Let's see. Grace, I'm going to use you because I see you here on Zoom with me, but you don't have to say or do anything, but I just want to use your name for the sake of this example. So Grace, let's say that you and I we're hanging out in Howard Hall, okay? This is no slight to Howard. I love Howard, okay? So we're just hanging out in the common space. And then, Grace, I say something to you that's really offensive, really just showing my biases and prejudices. And, but I'm not aware of that. And so, but I've somehow caused you harm. And Grace, you take a moment and you say, you know, I think I need to have a conversation with Paige. So you sit me down and you tell me the offense that I've just caused. And in your delivery, you were very upset. You were very angry, as you should be. But you were very upset, you were very angry, and you were very direct with me. All three things that make me feel extremely uncomfortable hearing this. And now I've become defensive. And so as you are telling me, you're reading me my rights and telling me, you know, the offense that I caused you, in the process, I start crying. And this situation becomes very dramatic. And if only, Grace, you would have just said it a little bit different. If you could have just, you know, changed your tone. If you could have just said it to me in a way that I could have received it, we probably would have had a different situation. But since you didn't, Grace, I'm actually going to tell the rector on you because, you know, you were being super rude and disrespectful and distasteful. And even though I said some really racist things to you, you didn't have to come to me and talk to me like that. Okay. So now the rector gets involved and you get in trouble, Grace. You're in trouble because of your delivery. You were rude. You were disrespectful. Like, I know I said some things, but you need to behave better. You know, how you're responding isn't aligned with our institutional values and our goals and community standards and expectations. So this is what they mean. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, you know, determine, you know, and should I say anything, you know, or should you say anything? Because who knows, the next time that you come across this situation, because you are not able to, you know, carry your pain in a way that's conducive for all of us to hear, you are now then in trouble, okay? And that's what it means by trying to figure out how to react and not, and if responding with anger or striking back is going to cause negative consequences, or if you don't say anything at all, will then, or Grace, if you don't say anything, well, this means that you're complicit in what's happening. So, Dr. Luke Wood, I love Dr. Luke Wood because he helped develop this wonderful framework called R.A.V.E.N. And it says that R.A.V.E.N is not intended to be a sequential process, but rather a framework to guide thinking and actions to disrupt racial microaggressions when they occur. The framework also works best when actions and statements are unconscious in nature and are not intentionally racist, as the latter requires a direct and stern response, as to what I was alluding to earlier. Ultimately, we find that individuals benefit from having a framework such as this to consider what they do. Otherwise, they are likely to do nothing. And microaggressions can be harmful, so we don't want you to be a bystander, we want you to do something. So R.A.V.E.N stands for the following: redirecting the conversation or interaction, asking probing questions, values clarification. And this is why I said it was so important to understand our institution stance on discrimination and knowing that we do have a spirit of inclusion statement. I know SAO has it hung up in their office, so shout out to SAO for making sure that that's front and center in their office. emphasizing your own thoughts and offering concrete next steps that a person who was doing the violating or the harm, what are some things that they can become involved in? What are some things that they can do in order to be able to lessen the fact that this may happen again in the future? So the first step, you redirect the interaction with the goal of immediately stopping the conversation to prevent further harm from occurring. For example, observers can do so by intervening and asking the aggressor if they could speak with them for a moment. And so this may look like just that. This is a lot more of a direct approach. It reminds me of the D and green dot, but it's very direct. In the virtual space, because we spend a lot of time in a virtual classroom or virtual space, like we are here today, and this is hybrid, but you can just go ahead and chat a person and say, hey, especially if you're the host, or you are the leader of your organization, it's really uncomfortable that we start to become comfortable with the discomfort of having to call people out or being direct. And you can pull that person, let them know, hey, I want to pause this conversation because I'm just concerned about some of the language that's being used, and just letting them know that what they did is not okay. Fun fact, even in my position, this does not become easier. It doesn't become easier. I just want you to know that. The discomfort I think that experiencing the discomfort you might become used to, but it doesn't become easier. And I had to do, I didn't do it direct. I will say I used another step in here, in emphasizing my thoughts, but I definitely had to have a conversation with one of my colleagues who had been here for over 20 plus years, and he was a white male, and I just knew that if I had this conversation with him, my career was just going to be over. And I was completely wrong, and I'm so happy that I was. Because I did have to have the conversation, because some of the things that he said was problematic. The only things I could not stop him in that moment, because it just was not appropriate. And we were amongst company, individuals who were not a part of the minority community. So when you are in these moments, for example, if you are at an off-campus gathering where you are with your team, or you are hanging out getting ice cream, or you're over somebody's house having a barbecue, or just playing yard games, I think that those social situations that we sometimes are in can be a little difficult to gauge. In context, it's really important. 2, asking probing questions to the aggressor to help them understand their statements and their actions and how they can be perceived as rude, threatening, and harmful. Because racial microaggressions are often the consequences of implicit bias, aggressors are not always aware that their statements and their actions are harmful. So therefore, by asking probing questions, it can be an effective way to create the cognitive dissonance that is necessary to recognize that their statements or actions are problematic. And so this is probably one of my favorite strategies when dealing with racial microaggressions is just by simply asking a person what they meant about what they said. Which is always really interesting to see the response, because sometimes, because it is so unconscious, they're like, what did I just say? And it's like, wow, where is the self-awareness? Where is it? But when that happens, there's an opportunity, there is a moment for, once again, the cognitive dissonances that take place to help the person come to their higher self, into their higher level of consciousness in that moment, because they may be operating at an unconscious level. And just by asking that question, it can simply bring them out. The values clarification is the third step in R.A.V.E.N. It involves identified shared organization values. So what is Notre Dame's position on trust, diversity, inclusion, safe spaces, welcome environments, treating everyone with dignity and respect? And I think that what's really interesting is that the dichotomy between, oh, Notre Dame is such a very special place. All the people are really sweet. Everybody's really nice. It's amazing. It's very welcoming. And you will hear this from anybody who you meet, especially if they are a visitor on our campus. And I love when visitors come to our campus, because I feel like Notre Dame does a really great job with the radical hospitality. They do a really, we make sure, like, we can always tell when somebody may have lost their way, and somebody may say, or a student may say, hey, do you need help? Do you know where you're going? Or if you see somebody in front of Touchdown Jesus, students will offer to take the picture for you, like, very welcoming. But then when it gets to living in the dorms and we get into close proximity and all of the visitors have gone away from home, it's like a different story. And I don't really know what that dichotomy is about. But this is why I had mentioned earlier, it's so important to understand where our institution is positioned when it comes to these topics, so that when you are in the dorms, when you are off, with individuals from the community and you need to have a conversation with them, this is a way to hold them accountable. And it also serves as a reminder. Emphasizing your thoughts is the fourth step. So you emphasize your own thoughts and feelings in this particular step of the model.
Hold on.
There we go. My battery is going to die. Okay, so oftentimes the aggressors fail to recognize that a racial microaggression is not only harmful to the person or the persons who were directly targeted, but also those individuals who were there to observe it. And this is when becoming a bystander becomes really important, because people become offended for the person who experienced those things. And I think that if you have ever been in the position to observe somebody being mistreated, regardless if it was a racial microaggression or if somebody was being treated poorly because of them being a part of the LGBT community, or if they were being treated poorly because of their social economic status, and you are seeing that happen, I think it can be offensive for all individuals involved. However, I know that we can't dictate what happens when we go off of campus, even though I feel like these are tools. I just think that is really important that especially when we are a community here at Notre Dame, that it's important that we create space to be able to have these conversations so that people can feel included. That inclusion component is very important. And so one way of doing this is using I statements. I think, I feel, I was hurt, I was disappointed, followed by an explanation of how the aggressor's words or actions may have hurt the targeted person or group. It could be an effective way to do so. And the example that Wood gives is that I was saddened to hear you say that about people from Valencia Hills. I think someone from that community would be very hurt by what you said. Where you said that John was so articulate, I feel that you were implying that John spoke better than you expected him to speak. So the last one. So the last step is the next steps and the final actions. And this is where one suggests what the aggressor can do to correct or change their behavior moving forward. And this can include a range of actions to address the harm that has been done, as well as to reduce future harm. And these actions can be including offering an authentic apology or to the person who was targeted, or being mindful of the actions in the future and guiding them to resources on implicit biases and microaggressions. So in other words, you can say, hey, I think that'll be really cool if you all, if your student group or student organization signed up for mindful training. I think that maybe you can have a find a conversation partner over in MSPS or OCS, or not OCS, but Office of Student Enrichment, the Office of the Gender Relations Center, somebody who may be faculty or staff, somebody who can assist, or you feel comfortable or safe with having these very hard conversations. There can be text, there can be articles, there can be a variety of different things that a person can do in order to help grow that self above them up, and help to reduce future harms. So I'm going to switch gears here just a little bit, and I want to share with you about the love and kindness meditations. And given COVID, I really wanted to do some like a love and kindness meditation in person, but the vibe has to be right. And so I just want to introduce this to you, because love and kindness meditation, the research has, as I said before, the research has shown to help reduce implicit bias. And one of the reasons why, I'm just going to share from the things that I have read as well, is that you have an opportunity in a safe space, because you're usually, by yourself. You have the opportunity to figure out what biases and prejudices that you're carrying. It also gives you an idea of how to create empathy and grace for yourself, because I think that's important, that no matter how much D&I work you do, there's never ever going to be a time where you have arrived, if you will. Even myself, it's something that I have to continuously work on, continuously educate myself on, and still keep up with the ever-changing field. And so what that means is that I'm going to make mistakes sometimes, but I know that if I am reaching out to that person, I'm making amends, and I said my piece, and I'm not running from it or trying to avoid or become confrontational. I know that I can apologize and then move forward. But that also understanding the grace that I want to have extended to myself. I'm sorry, I just got a message. I'm sure that wasn't a question. Okay. In the same way that I want grace, when I am messed up, it helps keep me mindful that when people say something or do something to me, and I'm just kind of like gauging to see what their intention is based on how the information is delivered or something of that, it allows for me to extend grace to them as well, and also have some form of empathy, because there have been times where I have definitely have caused harm to another person of color, only to realize that I was really in the wrong. And don't get me wrong, I definitely had tears. I was crying because I was like, I cannot believe I just did this, and I'm doing D&I work. What kind of person am I? And I did all of this self-deprecating stuff that just does not help anybody. So after I was able to dry my tears, I had to go apologize to that person and just take, accountability and responsibility for what I said in that moment. And it hurt me to know that I hurt this person. It hurt so bad to know that I hurt this person. But it was a learning moment for myself, because that's when I learned, it is possible that harm can be caused, and it cannot, it is not, meaning to be attended as it relates to race and ethnicity. But it also doesn't have to be something that breaks down a relationship if we know how to maneuver through it. And so when you look at understanding your prejudice and biases through the context of love and meditation, it'll give you an opportunity to just really reflect on who you are, your upbringing, and how you want to change and how you want to show up in different spaces. So just a little background about me. My grandmother, she is, she'll kill me if I actually gave her real age, but she's in her 90s, and she is a part of the silent generation. And ever since I was a little girl, my grandmother has made it clear to me that it was important that I become married and have babies. And neither has happened to this day, okay? And there are some other things that she says is just really problematic, just in general regarding race, gender, all of the things, LGBT community. And, I think I've pretty much decided that I'm not going to challenge my 90-something plus year old grandma on certain things, because it's just not worth it. But I think that it's important to realize that this woman is a very important person in my life. And it would just not make good sense to me to believe that she had no form of influence in my life, and that some of the things that she's taught me and instilled in me do not show up currently. They have to show up in my life, in my adulthood today. And so some of this stuff can be, really, 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 really deep. If you have grandparents who, they say some really messed up things, but you love them like no other, because those your grandparents is there. That's all you have. You know what I'm saying? So it becomes this really interesting situation to be put in. But it's really important to have a meditation to essentially help unlearn some of the things that we've been programmed to think and to associate or stereotype, and things of that nature. So I wanted to share this screen here, and then also stop to answer any questions. This isn't the last slide. This is the last slide because I want everybody to fill out the survey here, but I wanted to just leave this up here just in case anybody wanted to take a picture of some of these resources that we have here. But it's just really important to know that, once again, that if you know somebody who's experiencing racial microaggressions, or you are observing somebody experiencing them, and you can see that one, it happened, or two, you think there's inclination, or somebody's venting to you and telling you, that we consider how that person is dealing and coping with them. Because if not, we know that it can lead to racial battle fatigue, and racial battle fatigue can then essentially impact academic achievement and student connectedness. Questions?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paige, for sharing your time and your wisdom with us. I know I gleaned a lot of valuable lessons from that. And we just really appreciate engaging with you. I know we unfortunately only have our space for 18 more minutes, and we have to get through 2 general orders, but if you could maybe just drop your email in the chat, or I could share it with everyone. And if they have any follow-ups, that would be beautiful. And they could stop by 210 as well, Paige.
Okay, no problem. Let's see. I will put my stuff in the chat here. Let me just do that for everybody.
Oh,
but
yeah, and I can email it out too as well, Paige.
Yeah, it's super easy. It's paige.jackson@nd.edu.
Beautiful.
Yes, and yeah, if you could just take the survey, that'll be amazing. So thank you guys so much, and I appreciate you for having me.
Thank you, Paige. We really appreciate you. Hope you have a beautiful evening.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for engaging in that mindful training. It's a really valuable exercise. I love the R.A.V.E.N model as a key takeaway from that. And that is also, I will recognize this is in fulfillment of the constitutional requirement for our Celebrating Diversity workshop in Article 3, Section 5, Clause 1 for all senators. So thank you so much for engaging with us here today. Paige is just an absolute gem on our campus. So really appreciate it, everyone.
You all have an amazing rest of the meeting. And Sarah, Erin, if you guys need anything from me, just feel free to shoot me an email. If not, I report back to campus on Tuesday.
Amazing. Yes, Paige is a Tuesday, Thursday gal in MSPS. So
Thursday. Yep. All right, y'all, take care.
Thank you, Paige. See ya. All right, folks. So without further ado, I believe we have Devin Diggs here with us today, which is so exciting. And I'd like to invite Grace Stevenson, the Student Union Treasurer, to read her nomination for the President of the Shirt Project. So Grace, the floor is yours.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can. Maybe we'll turn you up just a tad.
I have a soft voice. Sorry. I'll try to project.
No worries.
Alrighty. Dear Senate, as is enumerated in the undergraduate constitution of the University of Notre Dame, the Student Union Treasurer shall recommend to the Student Senate the President of the Shirt Project, according to Article 11, Section 6B, Part 1. I will not read that. At this time, I am thrilled to extend my full recommendation to Devin Diggs for the position. Devin is a current junior majoring in neuroscience and behavior, minoring in education, schooling, and society, and is already an accredited and active member on Notre Dame's campus beyond his responsibilities with the Shirt Project. Devin has been a part of the Shirt Project since his first year on campus. During his freshman year, he was one of 3 freshmen on the Shirt Committee and worked on on-campus events promoting the shirt, wrote new pages of the Shirt history book, organized the itinerary for the special unveiling guest, Patrick Warburton, and undertook other important administrative tasks. Last year, he served as vice president of the Shirt and learned about the administrative behind-the-scenes work that occurs for the Shirt Project directly from the prior president, Jennifer Paul. Devin has already proved his leadership capabilities since he assumed the role of president in April. As we look to future uncertainty with the sales of the shirt, Devin has already been actively creating and implementing initiatives to continue support for and sales of the shirt. I've been beyond impressed with his ingenuity, thoughtfulness, and dedication as president of the Shirt Project since this spring. I can recommend Devin without reservation, and I'm requesting that Senate approve his nomination as a result of his extensive qualifications, years of experience, and continued dedication to the shirt. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much, Grace. Really appreciate that. We can now open the floor to any questions that you may have for Devin, who is right up there, so you can direct them directly to him. Yeah, Sam Canova.
Devin, can you please stand up? Yes. Okay, now with your body, please show us how you think a giraffe sleeps. Can you please show us how you think a giraffe sleeps?
That was beautiful, Devin. Thank you for being a good sport about a non-germane question, but appreciate you, Sam Canova. All right, any other further questions? Okay, let's vote on that motion. Great, all in favor, that passes. We can now enter debate on Devin's nomination. Devin, I will ask that as we debate, you just exit the room, but who do I see that's very far up back there? I see Anoop. Anoop, do you want to be tasked with bringing Devin back once debate is over? Okay, thank you so much. We'll see you soon, Devin. Okay, wonderful. Any points of debate on Devin's nomination? Yeah, Niels. Sure. Yeah, he was the only nomination. Yep, to be perfectly frank, Niels, this is just a constitutional requirement that he would love to get this approval. So, but great clarification. Oh yes, and Grace can speak to that as well.
FMB already approved him, and he has been serving in capacity as the president. This is, I would hope, formality. He is wonderful.
He's a delight. Yes, again from Niels. Okay, and we can vote on that motion. All in favor? Wonderful, that passes. And now we are entering our final, Madison, what's up? Oh, cool. You're just extra eager. I appreciate that. Okay, we are now in our final vote on Devin Diggs's nomination as the president of the shirt. All in favor? Great, and all opposed? Wonderful. Devin is now officially the president of the shirt. Anoop, bring him back in and we can tell him the very exciting news. Thank you, Anoop. Hello, Devin. You have been confirmed. Happy day. Thank you so much for writing that beautiful letter, Grace, and thank you for sharing your time with us tonight, Devin. Really looking forward to your work this year. Appreciate you. Thank you. Okay, everyone. We can now move into general orders. We have SO 2021-10, in order amending the Constitution to prohibit student union investments in and consumption of forced labor. And I would ask Ricardo to engage with this order.
Should I go down there?
Sure.
Hey, everyone. So over the weekend and around the weekend as well, we got a couple of emails with some very helpful guidance. I think the term is constructive criticism about the order. And I actually believe that it would be best to table this order for now while we kind of like get on those, I guess, parts of the order that need to be brushed up a little bit and maybe updated so the order can be more effective in achieving what it sets out to achieve. So that said, as the only co-sponsor, I believe, in this resolution, I would like to table that motion at this time and extend an open invitation to any of those present, as well as any of those who might be in Zoom or otherwise involved with Senate to co-sponsor this as well. I see a couple of hands. So yeah, just to finish up, I'm probably going to put up like a message in our group me. If you guys can go ahead and like that to show interest in co-sponsoring this, because I see this resolution as more than a one-person project. So if we can get as many of you guys involved, that would be awesome. So if you guys want to get involved in this, you can go ahead and like that. And yeah, I'd be super happy to coordinate that moving forward. That said, I will formally request this resolution to be tabled for now. So yeah, can I just take questions? Michael Murakami?
Yes, sure.
Oh, Madison? Not necessarily the Committee on the Constitution, but just a group of senators who would be willing to work with me on this moving forward.
Okay, do I hear a second to Ricardo's motion? Or there's a hand. Is that Lainey?
Yeah, so the question, kind of based off that, do you think it would be better to just send this to the Committee on the Constitution?
Honestly, I would be open to it. I would be happy to discuss that with anyone else who would be interested to co-sponsor this resolution. So if you want to participate in that conversation, we can definitely discuss that. Ben. Sure. I'm probably not the best person to elaborate on all the feedback, given that it was quite lengthy. If I had my computer, it'd be a little more helpful. But essentially, there's, how can I phrase this? There are a lot of intricacies in how the student union sources of revenue operate that are not nearly as simple as Michael Dugan and myself thought they were when we were writing this initially. So we want to kind of like show those nuances in the resolution such that when it is enacted, that change can actually happen in practice. And just so it's not like a nominal thing in the Constitution that ends up doing nothing because of some obscure legal or financial obstacle in the way. So we just want to make sure that the order can be effective in achieving what it sets out to achieve. Again, I would be very happy to discuss this at length once we get that group of senators rolling who want to work on this.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was great.
Do I see any
Ricardo.
further hands?
Seconding his motion?
Oh,
Okay,
thanks.
Great. And Ricardo, could you please just clarify your motion once more?
Sure. So I motion to table this resolution for now. I don't know if anything else is required.
No, that's just fine. All right, so we can, now that we have a second, we can vote on Ricardo's motion to table SO 2021-10. All in favor? All right, and all opposed? Okay, thank you so much, Ricardo. We will table this, and I look forward to additional engagement on it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Great. We can now move to any announcements. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share with everyone? Yes, Sam.
Senior class council is doing a picnic tomorrow, 1 to 4 for seniors, lawn games, Chick-fil-A, free food, stuff like that, at Flagpole and South Lawn.
Exciting. Thanks, Sam. Any further announcements? Yeah, Renee.
The sophomore class council is putting on yoga from 4 to 5 p.m. on Friday. So your sophomores will be trying to grab one by
That sounds lovely. Any further announcements? Yeah, Mairead.
Stop is hosting a drive-in or walk-in if you don't have a car movie in the Walt Architecture Lot tomorrow night. We're showing Shrek 2 to continue the outdoor Shrek movie series. So the gates open at 7:30 if you have a car, but the movie starts at 8:30, so you can walk in at any time. Bring blankets, bring food. Cars are only for households, and also we're screening Parasite at all available times this whole weekend in Depot with the Korean students this weekend.
That's an awesome idea. That's super exciting, Mairead. Thank you. Yeah, Ricardo.
Just to keep you guys all appraised, I have just put the message in the group meet, so if you're interested in that, please go ahead and drop that.
Very on top of it. Thank you, Ricardo. That's awesome way of using channels. I appreciate that. Okay, any other further announcements?
I'll say that the Notre Dame Music Festival is going on right now in the stadium. If anyone wants to pop over to see your friends, they perform in their student groups. And there's also food trucks right out front. I believe it's like churros and elephant ears. So we got like tonight. So just put that out there because we're already so close.
And I am actually running over there to sing in like 23 minutes. So if that's an incentive to you, there you go. Natalie, did I hear something from you? Oh, Madison. Okay, yes, of course. Second, let's vote on that. All in favor. Exciting. Okay, have a great weekend, guys.